Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2 of Culture and Decay here on the Swampcast Network. Feels nice to be back here, and as you can see, we got a whole new setup, whole new logo, and just a whole new, brand new... I don't even know how to put it into words, honestly, other than I'm just excited for the future here with a whole new world ahead of me. And I'm very honored to start this second season off with a big guest here, Mr. Guy Swann. For those who aren't familiar, Guy is the host of the Bitcoin Audible podcast, as well as CEO of 111 Productions. Guy, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, what's up, man? Thanks for having me. I haven't sat down and chatted about Bitcoin in a while, actually. I've been avoiding interviews because specifically what I just talked about is the fact that I don't have this is my setup right now. It's essentially a empty basement. But this will be the first one. This is the first one I'm doing from my new thing. It's not even slightly finished and it doesn't have walls yet, but it's something. But yeah, I'm a Guy Swann. I am the guy who has read more about Bitcoin than anybody else you know. And I have proof of work for that. Bitcoin Audible, main format of the show is I read, literally. I read things like the best works in Bitcoin, the essentials, the historical things, the origins of the cryptography, the economics, all of it. And we just dig into it as deep as it goes. And we also do chat episodes, and I have my solo episodes and stuff. And this past year, my wife and I started a media production company. This basically it owns Bitcoin Audible, and we are trying to expand into a bunch of other things. But I've been in Bitcoin for 12 years. 12 years. Jesus. A third of my life. Yeah. Has been Bitcoin now. And so I learned a thing or two along the way.
Heck yeah, man. Well, I'm definitely honored to have you on being in this new place that you moved to. So let's just kind of dive right into it then. You said it's been 12 years. What exactly first got you into Bitcoin? And I know you're kind of a Liberty guy too, so a little bit of a caveat there too. Which came first, Bitcoin or Liberty? I'm kind of curious.
Liberty.
Okay.
Yeah, we my brother and I actually got into Bitcoin at the exact same time. Or within the hour, because as soon as someone told him about it, he was like, dude, Guy, you've got to check this out. And we were living together at the time and trying to figure out, what the hell we wanted to do. I was working towards doing network technician stuff, but I was still deep into film at the time because I had gone to film school. And but kind of the tech side and the orchestration, my honors thesis in film was about the design of the production, about how the invention of the Steadicam, and all the technical stuff is one of the things that had really fascinated me about the idea of making a story happen that wasn't true. It wasn't actually happening. That orchestration is just fascinating. But partly in that is my love for story and for things that make sense. And the world just didn't make sense in a lot of different ways. And I kind of down that rabbit hole in my exploration of, the power of BitTorrent and how internet was changing the world. I was kind of waking up to the fact that the internet had been something that was literally fundamentally changing things, changing who we are and changing the power structures. And I had always thought of it as a toy. It'd always been something that I could play with, and something where I could download music and for free. That's just how I had treated it. And I was beginning to understand that it was something completely different. It was a lot deeper. And my brother was taking economics at school. He was majoring in economics. And he's my older brother, by the way. And he would come back and he would be like, dude, this doesn't make any sense. And like he would literally have been like, he argued with his professors quite a bit, which they did not enjoy. But you know, like what they teach in like micro and macroeconomics is literally contradictory. Like, and he would point that out. He'd be like, you taught me this last week, and now today you teach me this. These two things cannot exist in the same reality. These things are mutually exclusive. And Keynesian economics is just chock full of that crap because it doesn't work from first principles. It doesn't have an a priori reality to fall back on. They just kind of build it upon a bunch of empirical data, which is just obscured. But anyway, we went through this whole rabbit hole of economics and eventually found Austrian economics. And suddenly things started to click. Things made so much more sense. And we just kind of went down the Mises, the Rothbard, the Hayek, the Hoppe rabbit hole. And we were just utterly fascinated. And so between my love of BitTorrent and decentralized protocols at the time, and I was first learning about cypherpunks, and then my love of like a fascinating story and like the technical side of things and networking, and then our diving into economics and finding Austrian economics, and then like heavy liberty bias. Somebody pointed us at Bitcoin, and it was just like, you know, it was the trifecta. It was like the culmination of everything that we had been interested in at the time. And it was that night we went barreling down the rabbit hole as fast as we got on a go-kart and we just floored it. That night I remember we stayed up all night drinking and just like just getting busted and being like, oh my God, this is going to change the damn world. This is so freaking huge. This is money without the state. And we had no idea what we were really looking at. And we like read the white paper that night, and we just had like went on a riff for like 8 or 9 hours. And I realized, just while we were in the middle of the conversation, I like looked over and like the sun was coming up, like it was morning, and we had just been completely engrossed all night long, in what this thing was and what it could mean. And then that was that. We went through hell for, 3, 4 bull markets and horrific crashes. Lost some keys along the way. I had every wallet and everything known in Bitcoin like set up at some point and tested. Ran UASF node, part of the block size war and everything, and here we are today. Started podcast about 4 years ago, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Wow. So the podcast is fairly recent compared to how long you've been in the space.
Yeah.
Damn, that's really cool. So yeah, it sounds like very similar to me with my own evolution. I kind of discovered them both at the same time. It was like I discovered Ron Paul and then see, oh shit, this technology is kind of implementing this into reality.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I always hear from some people is this debate on whether Bitcoin is better as a store of wealth, whether it's better as like a currency to facilitate an exchange. Someone like myself sees it more as both, but I'm curious to hear how you see it.
Definitely both. When you have a currency or you have a monetary good that's good for exchange, it necessitates that it has a strong network and it holds value for the period of time that you need it in exchange. And it doesn't make sense to separate those two things, because the thing that you store value, like it's only because of fiat that we actually think that this is somehow normal, when really it's just an inefficiency. It just means that money has failed at its job and we've had to seek a store of value elsewhere because fiat sucks at it. But the whole point of money is, like, the only thing you do with money is trade it. You don't consume it. You don't like stick it into a machine and spit shirts out the other side. Money is the thing that is the network for establishing exchange and organizing resources between people. It's the resource allocator, not the resource. And in the context of store of value, is to try to separate them is to misunderstand why it stores value. Like, it's not as if you're guaranteed to have exactly the purchasing power today as, you know, in 5 years. Like, that's completely irrelevant. The only thing that money can do as far as giving you an assurance is that you still have the same proportion of the economic network. So if like a nuclear bomb goes off and blows up half the country, if you still have like one of 21 million Bitcoin, you still have that proportion of the economic system. But the economic system might be able to produce a tenth of what it was able to produce before. That means you lost purchasing power. However, you did not get diluted. Your proportion of the economic output remains. So it's far more like saying you have a share of a network. It does not mean that the network doesn't grow. It doesn't mean that the network doesn't shrink. It just means that the network won't cheat you itself. And in so doing, the most reliable form of that type of tool, aka money, ends up becoming the most reliable place to store value, period. So it's at the end of the line that it ends up basically fulfilling that promise. But then the reason you store the value is because you want resources later, because you're trying to exchange it. But payments and the idea of currency or whatever is not a hard problem. It's a problem we solved a billion different ways, a billion different times. And we have entire ecosystems and markets and payment networks and all sorts of stuff on top of it. Now that we have a programmable base money, the problem is even easier and more secure and more sovereign. Lightning Network being a great example, Liquid being a great example, Fedimint, like the amount of optionality we have to solve the payment problem is essentially infinite. It's what we can engineer and imagine, essentially. The difficult problem is, how do you make a digital money?
Yeah, and that's actually something that plays into some criticisms that I had from some other guys here on the network. And since you kind of leaned into this example a little bit, I guess I'll jump straight into it. Josh, one of our co-hosts on here, his criticism
Josh, I hate Josh. Josh is
fuck
the worst.
Josh. Oh man, he'll talk mad shit next Swamp Creatures. But
love it. I can't wait.
We got a new feud brewing for the new year. Josh versus Guy Swann. But anyways, Josh, this is just his criticism of pretty much anyone who says buy Bitcoin to protect from a collapse, or buy gold or whatever to protect from a collapse. His whole thing is always, you can't eat Bitcoin, you can't eat gold. He'll even say you can't eat land.
Can you eat dollars?
I mean, you probably can, but I don't think you're getting any nutritional value.
He's misunderstanding what makes a money. And you can actually see this in literally every monetary good in history, is that it ends up getting priced out of whatever its utility value was. Like gold being a great example, is most gold sits in the ground. Like, it does nothing because you specifically don't want to consume it, because it's a good money. Like, money is a utility in and of itself. And this is true of literally all communication mechanisms or communication tools. So like, what's the use of a smartphone? What's the use of a phone at all if you're the only one with one? Like, does it have utility? I mean, you can call someone, but you can't call anybody because nobody has a phone. So it's a great communication tool, but it has no intrinsic value. You can't do shit with it if nobody else has a phone. And if one other person has a phone, you can only call one person. What a wonderful tool. Maybe you don't like that guy. So a communications tool, money is ultimately a communication network. What it is historically, it has been a physical good that just so happened to have a insanely rare set of properties that make it a really good accounting mechanism. And it, we could get into the details, and there's been whole books written on it. but that it scales across time, size, and space. That you can, transmit it from North Carolina to California, which you can't do with a house. And, your chickens are dead by the time you get over there, like, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't rot. 100 of them is literally worth exactly 100 of the item. Like each individual unit or piece of it is quote unquote fungible. Whereas, one chicken is not equal to one chicken. You can have a big, nice chicken. You can have a dead chicken. And so all of these different characteristics, they're insanely hard to find. They're almost impossible to find in all other things. That's why monetary goods are not only usually really bad at their job historically, and we're stuck using subpar monies, sometimes for centuries. But not only that when something does become money, it stops getting used for other stuff because money prices it out. Basically, the monetary premium as a communications network for economic exchange is so astonishingly valuable that you stop using it for the other things. The reason we don't have all the circuits in this computer that I'm using aren't made out of gold, because it's a better conductor. But it's too expensive because gold's still a better monetary base. And that's despite the fact that we live in a digital world and you can't send gold over the internet. It still holds that value premium. So that's what I would say. That's the whole point of money.
Yeah,
you don't need it. You don't use it for other stuff. It's money. You use it for exchange. All of those other utilities throughout all of history, what they were a way to establish a network. Bitcoin simply did it from zero. On the pure basis that had a network arose, Bitcoin could be a brilliant, almost perfect money. The only reason gold, all the other like utilities or intrinsic values, were simply to establish the fact that it had a preliminary network for another reason. And then somebody could say, oh, maybe I could use this as money, or maybe I could just hold on to this and then exchange it for other stuff later, even though I don't want the gold. I just want a sandwich tomorrow.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And gold seems to be the big one that always comes up too when people have this sort of discussion.
Yeah.
Because
it's a king example. Yeah.
Well, it has its historical
years.
precedent. I mean, there's even cryptocurrencies in this space that are supposedly gold-backed coins.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was it? Pax Gold was one of them that I was hearing about some time ago.
Let's try that whole thing again. That worked really great the first 100 times.
For me, it's just I really wish there was a way to audit the gold that would be in those vaults. Maybe they have some sort of but I'm not like in the PAX ecosystem or anything like that. I'm just kind of watching from the sidelines.
Still kind of defeats the purpose because it's in a central location. Like you can audit that something is there, but that doesn't mean that audit has no guarantee that it's yours. Government can just come in and stick a piece of paper on the door with the right signature and it's all gone, and that's ultimately what happened to all the gold. We had that.
So I got to ask then, with that criticism of, government could just come in and stick something on the door. That's something I always hear from people is government's going to ban crypto. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I don't know how that could be possible personally, just because, you and I, I'm sure we both have an understanding of the networks, and to ban everything would be near to impossible. But it feels like there are some people who I still talk to who think that that's such a looming threat that they don't want to jump into the ecosystem. How would you respond to that?
I would say, what else can you own that the government can't ban? And what else could you own that you had more control over if the government did ban? Like, if you compare it to anything else, Bitcoin blows it all out of the water. If the government did ban it, you still own it. And they can't take it from you. Like, literally, name one other thing. Like, I mean, drugs that you hide in your house, you're going to take that on a plane and leave the country. Like, I mean, it sounds risky, like it just, everything is a trade-off. Everything is a comparison. And governments can't ban Bitcoin in the sense that they're going to stop it or they're going to shut it down or they're going to revoke your keys on the Bitcoin network. Like, they can't do any of that crap. The only thing that the government can do is ban itself from Bitcoin. They can just ban their country from being able to use Bitcoin. But they didn't ban Bitcoin. They're just trying to stop the people in their country from using it. And they're just missing out on a global open monetary network, which the world has genuinely never had before. And I think the efficiency and the value that will be able to be created in the economic communication that is possible because of that, by removing politics, by removing the corruption, the manipulation of money through political whim from the economic system, it's just insane. It's absolutely insane. It's like, do you want to keep using poverty paper, or do you want a chance to get out from underneath? I mean, like, that's the whole problem, right? Is that the government bans things that are good for society. Like, I have a much bigger problem, like, suggesting that I should just kind of do what I'm told because the government is going to ban something, not because it's not working, but because it is working. Doesn't that say a lot more about the government than it does me or my choices or what I'm trying to do? Like, what the hell is the purpose of a free country if it's not that I can choose what I want to better my life? You should really reflect on what kind of a country you live in. If you're afraid of the government doing that, you're afraid to make a completely innocuous decision for your own personal finances because you think the government is going to attack you or ban it from existence. You should be worried about what kind of country you live in and the fact that you've normalized and made this okay. That's fucking tyranny. That's messed up.
Preaching to the choir here, man.
Yeah.
So, like, on that.
Sorry, I'm talking to your hypothetical. I'm talking to
No. I get what you're saying, man. I just like to play around here, but I agree with you that Bitcoin is sort of this tool that will always exist outside of the state. But I've also been kind of worried, especially the last few years, with kind of progressive players kind of coming into the space. Mm-hmm. For instance, we saw Sam Bankman-Fried got in trouble recently, but there's been a few other more, I guess you could say, progressive Democrat types who it's almost like they want to integrate Bitcoin into the state. At least that just seems to be my observation.
I mean, what's the specific direction? Are you saying you're concerned about that? Or
yeah, I'm pretty much just trying to say I'm concerned about that. Do you think that this is something that is a problem for Bitcoin, or is by Bitcoin by its very nature, these people they're trying to like mop the ocean?
No, it's mop the ocean. Yeah. It's inevitable. It's inevitable that the idea of Bitcoin gets watered down. But that doesn't mean the tool of Bitcoin gets watered down. The protocol and the culture is a very different thing. And the whole reason Bitcoin is revolutionary is because we know we can't achieve social consensus. So that's basically the problem it solves, is that we know we're going to be in a world in which social consensus is not possible, that social consensus is messy, but luckily we will have a protocol and a monetary consensus that is irrelevant to or independent of the social consensus. And what you're asking, and the potential downside is that, oh no, social consensus is about to get really messy. And it's like, well, yeah, like we were just kind of always headed there. And no, I'm not really worried about it. It's, it will be a constant push, but I think the culture matters, but think of the cultural changes that we have seen and that have been reinforced by the nature of Bitcoin and by essentially the totem of Bitcoin as an example of how to really define property rights, of how to really establish fairness, like what it actually means. It's hard if you don't have a concrete example to point at or to learn from, to not have ideas fall into gray areas. But when you have something to lean on that basically is like, it's like, you shouldn't be able to own these Bitcoin, but Bitcoin doesn't adjust to that opinion. It's a very different, you realize that that's just an opinion, you know? And the subjectivity of political belief basically rams up against the objective wall of Bitcoin's existence. Just run a node. If you're worried about it, run a node and mine some Bitcoin, right?
I'm already doing that first one. The second part, I'm a little bit farther behind as compared to you there.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time running. I've almost pulled the trigger on this like 20 times in the last few years. And after I got the podcast, I was like, I really need to mine like just a little bit. But I'm actually I'm working with a couple of different people on a number of different pieces of the puzzle, but I want to get something that's easily recreatable. That basically, I mean, not really a kit, like I'm gonna sell like a box of stuff, but a kit in the sense that there's like an explicit list of like, you can get these things and here's the software and the Raspberry Pi you need. I want at the end of this to have the miners running off of my thermostat and they're just heating my house as the heating unit was before. Without any, like, I don't want any like fancy variation or like, oh, you have to go turn on the fan and tweak the miners in a different way. Like, I want it running on a thermostat and heating my house. But that's the point of these right here is right now I'm just getting them set up to start on that journey.
And that's awesome. And, you know, that's actually what kind of drew me into creating a node and everything. Shout out to my friend Cam, who actually recommended me reaching out to get you on the show. He also is the one who guided me through. Yeah, he's a good guy. But sorry, I almost lost my train of thought there. He basically put me through the ringer, kind of giving me step-by-steps of how to put together a node and everything. I would love for that sort of thing to be more easily accessible for, say, mining.
Yeah. There's a lot. I've just read, and I hope to make an audiobook for it soon. The Brains Bitcoin mining book. It's a little short book, but it's really good. Really dense. And there's a lot of great like tutorials, but they're all very, very haphazard. You know, they're basically people getting their ghetto rig together and then showing how they did it, which is great. It's great. I mean, I'd have a hell of a time doing this if I didn't have all those videos to refer to. But it's not something that could be like, I actually want to talk to an AC guy in my area who was interested in this that I talked to on a plane on the way back from Bitcoin conference actually, and he gave me his card. He was like, I'm very interested in this, you should contact me later. I was going to talk to him and see about, I mean, I don't know, see if you could train their guys to literally do that. I mean, because you get 4 S9s like $150 a piece now, $200 a piece. They heat better, or they heat as much as a $6,000 unit, and it's under $1,000. Yeah, I was talking to a friend in Miami. We were hanging out late at night one night, and we just kind of like were riffing on a bunch of different ideas and like this stuff about using mining for heating. He has one S19 and it heats 1,100 square feet. And he vents it out when basically when it gets too hot. You know, these things run at like, what were the temperatures on the oil? I'm not going to give a specific, but they're uncomfortably hot. You don't want to run them in your house the whole time unless you can direct them outside. I'm pretty sufficient, or pretty confident that these 2 Watts miners will heat the whole house.
You see, that's really interesting because that goes on par with some off-the-grid guys that I was talking to, who they had theories about using geothermal energy to mine Bitcoin, but also by doing that, you would get like running heated water through your off-the-grid location. That's just one of the great things that I see in regards to Bitcoin is how it has really opened up these doors in regards to technology and what is possible. One thing that I have seen a lot of divisiveness about, and part of me looks at this and I think, maybe this isn't your neck of the woods of crypto, but I would still love your opinion. Things like gaming, there seems to be a divide of people who either see potential in this space, they don't want it in that space at all, or they want it in that space, but usually for the wrong reasons. And it's just corporate people who don't know anything about crypto to begin with.
Mm-hmm. So, hey guys. Hey, my dogs came and joined me. So you're asking about gaming with crypto in general?
Yeah.
Well, I would say the element of adding monetization to a game does fundamentally change the game, and that can be really exciting. And it can also be a great way to basically have like behavioral economics. But as far as creating like a blockchain for games or creating individual tokens for games that are blockchain based and they leave the game, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't think there's, outside of the fact that I think there is this, in the same way that kind of like esports and a certain type of game really expanded the gaming environment, I think adding micropayments like the Lightning Network and like what Zebedee is doing to gaming, it can basically expand it into this new area. But I don't think it fundamentally changes how we use games. Like, I don't think we're going to stop playing Super Mario 64 and Zelda and, League of Legends and these things because we have micropayments now, or that I'm going to start selling people League of Legends gold, or I'm going to start using it in the game, because there's a ton, like the basis of the game, and particularly like from the game developer's point of view, actually, is that like, what's the point of having money allowing like money like cross game if that's literally like people buying into your game is exactly why you actually make a return on it. Like, okay, so an example is, people talk about this with like NFTs a lot. That's like one of the prime examples, right?
Yep.
Is, somebody in World of Warcraft spends hundreds of hours and they get like the super powerful sword, and then I'm supposed to believe that, those game developers are going to issue these as NFTs, and then some other game is going to come out, or the sequel is going to come out, and they're going to be able to take that NFT and put it in this other game. Well, then that means you never. Why would any other developer, if it wasn't the exact same game, why would any other developer want you to invest in a completely different game to win theirs? Like, why would Mario Brothers want to reward me for having the Ocarina of Time? Like, what possible sense? And especially if I'm competitive, like if I'm competing against other people, it's like the pay to play games where like somebody can just come in and like with $1,000 and buy like the biggest armor and automatically be leveled up. People hate that. Like, that's not like a positive thing. Imagine how much worse it would be if people are carrying it over from some other game. And even worse is those developers now have more work to do because they have to create an item that doesn't even fit into their system. Or they have to somehow, like, they're rewarding people for buying a competitor's product. And at the exact same time, they're taking away the fairness and the environment of the game itself. They're trying to fit worlds together that don't fit because they're unique worlds. This is the whole point of the game. Like, there's just a whole bunch of reasons why economically it makes no sense. I don't think NFTs for in-game items makes any sense. It's a centralized database, even, or it's a centralized redemption no matter what you do, because the game developer has to design it, which means that what's the difference between them using like a spreadsheet versus a blockchain? Like, it gives them it gives them no benefit. In fact, it's worse because now you have to do like a transaction on what, Ethereum or something, or on a side chain or something just to move a sword around or something. It does. If you actually think of the problem in the space or the problems in gaming and stuff, I just don't see how blockchain fixes any of it, or NFTs are even related to it. The only thing that I think is interesting is the fact that you can essentially gamble within games that you're in, or you can pay to join a championship that pays out, maybe even in a programmatic sense. So you can have, rather than needing like the League of Legends company to come and do your like tournament, you can have something, Mitch, you know, you can just set up your own little tournament and we can do it all over Lightning, and we can play with like, you know, 50 friends, or like people, all the fans of the Bitcoin Audible podcast or something like that, and we get together and we play. And then, you know, payout comes. Like, that adds a new dynamic to the game, and I think that's interesting.
That's actually an interesting way of putting it too, because that's not something I had thought of, as being able to put all money in a pot and do something between friends. That would be really cool. Yeah, when
it basically separates from the center of the idea of creating monetization or sharing game experiences with people. And it also potentially has the ability to fund separate servers. So you can have the game and you can run it in a new location, because you've decentralized the monetization mechanism. You can decentralize the hosting as well. One basically has to come before the other. But yeah, sorry, interrupted.
No, you're good. Please interrupt away. But yeah, as far as like items in games, I think that's very delusional. And that's where I go back to that whole corporate speak. Oh, this is something that the kids are all talking about right now. How could we do that, even though they don't have any clue about it?
Sounds exciting. Yeah.
It sounds cool to investors who don't know anything.
Yeah.
But
there's I'm pretty sure I talked. Oh no, yeah, I definitely did. There's a episode I did, Guys Take 62 or 3. I don't know. It's blockchains, square peg for a round hole. And basically I fished into the crypto community and asked them to give me all of the top use cases, the most, like the best steel man, give me what blockchain does and all these great things that it's going to revolutionize. And I will give my assessment of all of those things. And I found, out of all the best examples, there was nothing concrete that, like, there's maybe one or two things that are questionable just because of how bad the current systems around them work, that maybe there would be a benefit, but I don't think it's the actual solution to the problem. I think it's like one of those things where, like, if you just upgraded from Windows XP to Linux, there's like, if you just upgraded your system, it would be like 10x better. And using a blockchain in that instance might actually get you half of the way there, with like a whole bunch of stupid trade-offs that don't make any sense. So maybe the blockchain would be better, but it's not even close to suited to the problems that they say, like record keeping. Like, it doesn't, I don't want to get into it just because it's a long, lengthy discussion of its own, but I covered it in that episode if you are curious.
Well, I'll definitely have to check that out, because as far as use cases go, that's something that I have always told people in this sphere. Like, if you want to get me to pay attention to your crypto, give me something that is at least somewhat useful in my day-to-day life.
Yeah.
I know would you consider yourself a Bitcoin maximalist, or?
Yeah,
okay.
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now this is where we butt heads.
I mean, the term is labels suck because people tell you what they mean rather than understand what you mean by them. Like, Bitcoin maximalism comes with a mountain of baggage, and everybody's baggage looks different and has a bunch of different stuff in it. So I say I'm a Bitcoin maxi, and you might have a completely different impression as opposed to what I mean when I say that. So take that with a grain of salt, I guess.
Well, my understanding of it, and I kind of use the maximalist thing with describing my perspective on this too. I consider myself kind of a
Hmm.
Bitcoin and Ethereum maximalist. Those are the two that I generally have found the most practical use in.
Hmm.
Um, but as far as that goes, I think it's just a matter of saying like, yeah, I think this is where the most of the best things are coming out of right now. There's very few other projects that I'm looking at, and I'm thinking there's any practicality. I don't really see a point of getting heavily invested into that ecosystem, especially if it only ends up being a flash in the pan.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say probably like I've done a handful of episodes specifically on Ethereum. I think actually the best thing Ethereum had going for it for a short while was proof of work. I think the greatest mistake they made was going to proof of stake. I think proof of stake is fundamentally is not a consensus system, and it's going to have fundamental flaws that will build up until basically we will look back and realize what happened, but it's already kind of happening. Essentially, it's an attempt to create the illusion of a cost for like the whole point of money and the reason money works. Like one of the core principles of money is that it is harder to create more monetary units than it is to create the stuff in the economy. And the reason that is a good thing is because you don't want people, because money is not a consumable, it's not a good in and of itself. It means that using money as the medium of exchange means that people stop trying to cheat the accounting system. And the only way to get ahead and to produce value is to actually produce, is to actually make things. Um, and I think Ethereum's best chance of long-term survival is to actually centralize, like try to, because a network that can basically a cryptograph like the Amazon of, I think like basically protocols for exchanges in a sense. I think that could actually be an interesting service, but they've taken so much technical bloat with them and tried to put up the facade of decentralization that they're trying to sell something that is not actually the value provided. And like, I don't think it's going to have censorship resistance in the long run. I think we're kind of already witnessing that. And I don't know, it's a lot to unpack, but I have a lot of mixed feelings about Ethereum and what direction it should go, and more specifically about the ideas that people have around it, and what I think is just deeply inaccurate. But
Well, I'd be curious to hear your take then, because for
yeah,
me, I'd be concerned at least for things like the basic attention token and whatnot, because that's something that I still find myself using that has been useful.
that's interesting.
Content, not every content creator I know takes it, but the ones
Hmm.
that do, Tim Pool, are getting something out of it.
Hmm. Yeah, I would
And
say in the context of basic attention token is that um, it's a great example of a utility token. So uh, and I kind of think just the economics of utility tokens fall away, because essentially what basic attention token is trying to be a redeemable for money. Like, but the utility is a mechanism of money. You know what you're trying to do, and what basic attention is kind of filling a gap for, is how do you directly pay content creators, and how do you directly reward people who are, how do you get directly from the consumer to the producer, right? How do you
yeah,
skip the middleman essentially? Well, a great example is the value for value stuff in the podcasting 2.0. Like, people boost stuff. I've been starting to read boosts and stuff on the show just because I've been surprised at how many sats are coming in over there. But like the Fountain app and things, like somebody just boosted 50,000 sats. I still like, that's like $10 for like an episode just to make a comment. I was like, damn, dude, thank you. But it's essentially like when you have decentralized money, you have the ability to do that. But if we had utility specific money, like the reason money is a communications network is because it connects the ability to price between all other utilities. All other services, all other goods have a singular thing to weigh against, a single network to weigh against, so that these things can be so that we can communicate the value and compare the value between these things. Like otherwise, how the hell do you compare a banana to a car? Like how on earth could we possibly, like they have completely different production processes. They have completely different like use cases. Car lasts a very long time. A banana lasts 5 or 6 days. Like how could you ever say, okay, a car is worth X number of bananas? And how could you ever have a liquid market where there are people who just happen to want 193,000 bananas in exchange for a car? You know, like it just, like none of it fits, right? There's no way to have that cross communication, which is why we use money. So the idea of and the whole reason money works is because we're all using the same one. It's like speaking the same language. It's like being on the same social network. As soon as you divert, it doesn't give you the benefit anymore. Like if I have a phone and you have a telegraph machine, our communication devices don't let us communicate. Same with money. So utility specific money is like trying to have a money for just bananas and a money for just cars, and then trying to have a liquid market between banana tokens and car tokens, when the very reason you have money is so that you don't have to do that. Like that is a huge inefficiency, because now you have a unit that is literally changing in price based on one singular utility, which why money is stable is because it doesn't change in price versus one utility or another. You know, if the car market gets blown in half, the monetary network doesn't shift in use like in some great way, because it's still being used for bananas and sandwiches and houses and everything else. It's just the car market changes in price based on the reality of the car market. But if you had a car specific token, everybody would run away from the car specific token. It's literally trying to devolve away from having a single money into having a bunch of different monies, which defeats the purpose of money. It's like everybody's going to speak their own language. Okay, well, then how are we going to translate between them? Well, we'll have a universal language. It's like, okay, well, why do we all have our own language? Like, why did I invent, Elvish, and we speak Elvish in my house and you speak Dothraki or something like that? If as soon as we go outside, we're going to speak English. No, everybody's just going to speak English. The common language is the purpose. And I think that same thing when it comes to quote unquote utility tokens is that as soon as you have a payment network with the base money, or a functioning system or protocol with the base money, Lightning Network being a great example, because I think it's doing what Bat Token is doing, but better. And I think there's probably more traffic in exactly that use case when it comes to podcasts and stuff. I mean, I have like 5 million sats or 6 million sats or something just over a handful of months from the value for value stuff. I would put money that's a lot more than anybody's gotten on a website in Bat Token, So I think in that regard, like, sure, it serves a purpose as a specific utility token, but what everybody wants to trade that utility token for is real money. And I think that's eventually where we go. I think it's essentially an arbitrage on things that we know we're going to need on this new money in the future, but doesn't exist yet. And there's still a massive amount of work and bootstrapping to do.
And it's funny you say that, because if you're a content creator and your channel is hooked up to Brave Rewards, which I guess is the content side of the Bat Token, there's now an option where you don't even have to touch crypto at all. It'll just go straight into USD.
I mean, there you go.
So,
that like, kind of explains exactly. Yeah.
But I would be curious to know, like, what exactly you're using in regards, because I was told about, at least I noticed it on the Umbrel software for the Node. I don't know what one you're using, but there's what is it, Podcasting 2.0 or something like that? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, it's called Podcasting 2.0. It's referred to that by Adam Curry. Like that's the setup. There's an app that has become really popular, and there's like a back end service that does like wallets called LNPay, lnpay.co. But the podcasting app is called Fountain. It's at fountain.fm, and it's become really popular. Like Linux Unplugged, I've got like a little tiny tug of war with Linux Unplugged because I listen to their show a lot, and they give me shit all the time because they get more boost and stuff. But they're like not even like a Bitcoin show, but they get tons of sats on Fountain. But the thing is that you can actually, I don't necessarily get it through Fountain because Lightning is a universal payment system, right? So I actually put my key send address, which is just like a way to find my node on the network. So anybody who's using the Breeze app, which is a wallet, but you can listen to podcasts in it, can also stream sats to me. They like pay 10 sats every minute or something listening to the podcast. And if they stop the podcast, they stop streaming. And you can boost podcast. And there's, I think on the Podcasting 2.0 website, there's like a bunch of different apps that have it integrated. And there's like a LN Bits Infinity plugin, or I wonder if you can download that. I don't know. Fiat Jaff was working on that. It's really cool though. But there's like a way you can use LN Bits, which you can get on Umbrel, to like plug a lot of this stuff in. But the cool thing about it is you just plug it into the RSS feed. So you don't even change anything. There's just like this new block in your RSS feed that says, this is my Lightning node, or this is how to find my Lightning node. And then any app that integrates it, which there's actually a bunch of them now. I hadn't even realized. I'd only kind of stayed in this one little corner of the space. Any app that integrates it, though, can just immediately pay you over Lightning.
Huh. Well, you've definitely given me some homework to look into for this network here tonight.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah, dude, get on Podcasting 2.0. I'll talk to the Fountain guys or shoot Adam a message or something. Like, yeah, we should definitely get you hooked up on that. I'll boost you some sats.
Shit, man, you got me sold on that regard now. But no, that's awesome. We're nearing the top of the hour here, so I'll ask one final question that an older member of my family has asked me to ask you.
All right.
So this is going to be funny. What advice would you have for someone who knows nothing about cryptocurrency, sees all this stuff in the news and whatnot, and is curious about it, but is a little bit hesitant, especially seeing stories like the FTX one that just happened?
Yeah.
Like, what's a good place to start, I guess you could say?
Dude, I mean, they're a sponsor, so this is going to seem like a shill, but I tell people to go to Swann Bitcoin. And I did that before they were a sponsor. Like, it's so no nonsense. Like, it's the safe place to send people because they're not going to get like the tokens or anything. And you can actually find all the things. Like, I mean, I have like my own little canon on there, like where I just have like a list of things that says what the hell even is Bitcoin, and I have like a list of content that I think is critical to just wrapping your head around it. It's a great place to start. It really is. But Bitcoin Audible too, honestly. Bitcoin. There's a great piece by Fidelity Digital Assets. They wrote a report called Bitcoin First, and I think they have a really solid and thorough, like intelligent perspective of the space, how to treat it, how to think about it, and how to start your journey down that. And that's in audio on the show. So that's probably a good thing to link to. Like, listen to that, and I think you'll have an idea of where to go from there.
All right. That sounds like a good place to send someone, and I'm definitely going to let them know to listen to, at the very least, the tail end of this podcast now. Stop asking me. But I'm kidding, obviously. But anyway, guys.
He's not kidding. He's completely serious.
Just a little bit. But is there anything you want to plug before we wrap things up here?
I mean, Bitcoin Audible and Shitcoin Insider, my podcasts, and follow me on Twitter and all that good stuff. Whatever. If you want to learn about Bitcoin, look up Guy Swann. I got stuff all over.
He's all over the web, all over the crypto world.
I'm in the internet in so many places.
I'm internet famous, guys. Anyway, Anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in to the first, the return episode of Culture and Decay here on Swamp Creatures. We're going to try and have a Swamp Creatures episode this week. We'll see. But if not, next Tuesday, we'll be joined by Jack Lloyd. And the whole crew will be here, and it won't be Culture and Decay. Anyway, you all have a good one. We will see you on the other side.